Yeah. The Outdoor Chronicles. So looking at like real uh, long-term relief, not like short-term stuttered relief, but when looking at long-term relief, I think what the message of non-duality is really pointing at is ownership. I mean, you can read about it, about doership in the Bhagavad Gita, for instance, or lots of Advaita Vedanta texts. The the that you're not inherently the doer. As what you are, as beingness, there's no doing, there's no effort put forth. Anything that's making effort or doing is not you. It's part of the contents of the experience. Or in recovery, addiction recovery, we call it the manifestations of self. The manifestations of self. So that self in these talks and in this case being that individuality, that sense of separateness, individuality. Yeah, I like to call it a character because it's kind of a character that's built that we take to be ourselves, like the character of Jay. So that character of Jay comes with a bunch of manifestations. In recovery, the biggest manifestation is resentment. And we look at resentment a lot because it causes so many issues. But there's so many manifestations that come with that, the character. The character. Now, none of them are really you. It's the character. Yeah. It's part of your experience. But it's not inherently you who's playing or being the character. So the effort that's getting put forth in life, whether it be mental, physical, emotional, psychic, whatever, is not you ultimately. This is one of the reasons I love this message, is because it's not messing with the thinking, but it's more investigating into the thinker. You see, it's looking before the thought. It's looking at the ground level of thought, rather than playing with thought and chasing thought around, yeah, or chasing emotion around. I know from my own experience, like in recovery, early on, I was really interested in addiction and why I was drinking so much and what caused this and how this moved. And it is very interesting from like a study point of view. But it never inherently got me free at the root of it. You know, things chilled out, depression chilled out, but there was still a lot of depression. But it seemed like a little bit more chilled out. But the thing is by doing that, thought is like you follow one thought cycle or emotion or habit pattern, and you say, okay, I've kind of got to the root of that, and then it's just like, whoop, and it's like over here, there's two more. So then I go over there, and I'm like, okay, I gotta, whoop. You see? So it's interesting to look at because it's part of our experience, but it's not inherently going to release that bondage on self, which is creating all of that movement of thought, and it's bolstering or firing up the mental system. So I love this message because it's not really looking at the thinking. It's inquiring into see if you're actually the thinker. Because I can spend my whole life chasing thought, chasing around thought, but it's not really going to get me free from thought because I'm still taking myself to be the thinker of the thought. I'm much more interested in looking at, is there a thinker? Is there a character named Jay, a separate individual who's firing those thoughts? Because when the thought or the mental system is creating a lot of discomfort, irritability, restlessness, discontent, if I'm taking myself to be the one who's initiating those thoughts, that means I'm owning the thoughts, which actually means that the thoughts are owning me. I think I'm owning the thoughts, and I think that I'm arranging that thought pattern. But that's not the case. The contents of thought is owning me. You see, the ownership switches there. If I think I'm the thinker, that's so good. If I think I'm the thinker, it's just so interesting, of the thoughts, if I'm the one who owns the thoughts, I think I'm in control of the thoughts, but the reality is I'm not. There's no me inherently there who's controlling thoughts. There's just a mental habit pattern firing all the time. So really, it's the thoughts then are having me. Because as the owner, I'm listening diehard to the thoughts. I'm never going to question them because I think they're mine. So what's really happening then is whatever's happening in the mental system is owning me and it's running me around. Yeah, that gets very uncomfortable because the mental system is only seeing dualistically, and the mental system is part of the manifestations of self, in that it's completely influenced by the past, and it's always looking to the future, and it's going to be a lot, that's going to create a lot of anxiety. Yeah. So what happens then to the meditator is the meditator sits down, and the meditator goes, I'm going to stop the thoughts. So then there's a force put forth in the meditation to stop the thoughts. But the thoughts don't stop. Because if we think we own the thoughts, we think we're initiating the thought process, we're going to be able to think that we can stop it. And when you sit down, try to stop it, and they don't stop, then it goes, well, I can't even stop my own thoughts, so now I'm failing. Because you're taking the thoughts to be yours, and you're taking yourself to be the thinker. That's the misidentification, you see? You're not doing the thought process. The thought process is just happening. The mental process is happening. The body is happening. It's playing out its characterness. And by listening to that, I'm taking those thoughts and that character, including the body, to be me. So then I'm stuck in this loop. Try to stop the thoughts. Can't stop the thoughts. I think I'm the one who's owning them, and now I'm failing at meditation. Where what I think meditation is really for is just a diminishing of the mental faculty. So like if you look at Zazen in Zen, for instance, you sit down and you watch the breath. You notice the mind come up. You might get caught in that story for a little bit, and then you see the thought pattern, you come back to the breath. So what happens over time is you see that the mental system is happening independently. You're not doing that mental system. And when you keep practicing that, if you're practicing properly, you stop having faith. You stop putting all of your faith in that mental system because you see how erratic it is. Now, what's that open up to you? It opens up to you what you already are and always have been as awareness, as beingness. What's another way to do that is to negate. It's just to negate what you're not. See, all these paths are leading up the same mountain. My friend Talib used to say, we're all in different aisles of the library, but all the books say the same thing or something. Something like that. It was great. But essentially all the roads, yeah, all the aisles in the library with all the different books lead to the same rental desk. They lead to the truth that you're not that mental system. So it's really inquiring into the thinker. So a thought comes up. Who does that arise to? Right away, the answer is probably going to be me, or let's say I. I being the root thought. I. Then it's important to take that, well, where does that arise from, that I? Can I find that I somewhere? You won't be able to. The I thought, the base thought, the ground floor of the character, let's say that, the ground floor of the character is another thought, it's another movement that you're not doing. You're not doing. It's happening, and it's talking to you as you, but it's not you. It's a mental system that's operating. You see, so by inquiring into the thinker, you're inquiring right into, one, the ownership. Is this actually my thought? Am I doing this thought? And two, you're inquiring into the doership of creating it. So then if you come to the realization, well, I'm not firing these thoughts, I'm not initiating this mental process, you stop trying to stop it because you see that it's not yours. It's like Paul Hederman says, once you see something's not yours, you lose a lot of interest in it. Yeah. Because once you drop the ownership, it's like whatever. You know, you're in a parking lot. If you're in a parking lot and you're walking to your car and you see like a shopping cart, like a grocery cart, ram into somebody else's car, it's kind of like, ooh, that sucks. But if it rams into your car, now it's who did that? Where's the person who did that? I gotta sue this person. I gotta get the money. That's my car. You see, they're both just cars, but one is yours, so it's personal. It gets personal. It's the same thing with the mental process. So if I sit down and I think the thoughts are mine, then everything that's in that contents of the mental system is taken very personally. I'm caught in it. So then I'm going to want to try to stop it. But what does stopping it do? It's more interest in it, meaning that if there's a mental movement and I try to stop it, I'm reifying the idea that it's mine, that I'm initiating it, and that I'm the owner of it. That's like the trap of it. So by trying to get out of it, I'm seemingly putting myself back into it. But you've never owned the mental system. You've never owned this body. It's part of your experience. It's happening. It's just a happening. It's action. It's actioning happening within a greater expanse of inaction, which is what you are, inaction. Not in action, but in action. Stillness. Stillness. So if we like looking at depression, anxiety, it's going to be the same thing. If I think, oh man, that's a that's a real anchor there. If there's a mental spinning happening in my head that's causing depression, and I think that I'm initiating that mental movement, that's causing a lot of issues for me. That's quite a dangerous place to be, because not only are you depressed, but now you're taking it that you're causing the depression is your fault. Same with anxiety. So not only is there anxiety happening in the mental system, but if you think that you are that mental system, then you think you're initiating that anxiety, which means you're going to try to stop that anxiety, which for anxiety and depression, specifically anxiety, if you're high in anxiety and you go ahead and try to stop that anxiety when you think you're the one initiating it, it might fire double time. That's interesting. I don't really know that. That's just something that came up right there, but yeah. But either way, if there's a depressive pattern in the mental system, and I think that I am the mental system who's initiating that pattern, then not only am I depressed, but I'm the one who is depressed, and I'm the one who's initiating depression, which is not the case either way. Yeah, it's happening. It's a happening within the expansiveness of your beingness. And that's a tough loop. That's a really tough loop to get caught in. I know that loop really well. Yeah, everything's my fault. I'm causing these depressive thoughts, and now I'm depressed. Now that's all coming from buying the ownership of the action of the head. Now that depression is getting super inflamed also by taking that ownership, because the thoughts are only getting power. I'm talking about now the thinking that pretty much leads to depression, not depression itself. When I'm in depression, I'm not inquiring, am I the thinker? Am I the one who... I'm doing something else. I'm going for runs. I'm doing service. I'm doing something else. Yeah, I'm more referencing the thoughts that lead to depression. Once you're in it, it's really, I mean, in my experience, if you're deep in it, you need to do something else first to settle down the mental system and then look at it. But if we're to look at the thinking process that leads up to it, yeah. If I'm thinking that I'm firing those thoughts, I'm really listening to them, and I'm building the story that's leading up to that depressive hit. Once the hit happens, it's like when I used to get really depressed, it's like I would hit a line. There's like a line I would hit, and I lost. I'm not getting out of this through inquiry or some meditation thing. I have to go do something else to settle down the mental system first. Because at that point, you're in the swirl. Whether it be anxiety or depression, you're in the swirl of the head. And once you're in it, trying to inquire out of it is like, it doesn't help. It doesn't help at all, in my experience anyways. But the thought process leading to it, now that is where the ownership and taking the doership as the thinker of the thoughts. Yeah. So what we really want to do is just pull the rug out from underneath the thoughts by looking at, is there a thinker? There's thoughts happening for sure, but they're not happening to you. They're just happening. There's a body happening. It's not happening to you. As they say in Chan sometimes, it's like, once I think I'm the thinker, then I'm making everything into a thing. All the stimulus of the contents of my experience at that moment, I'm making it into a thing. So rather than the wind just blowing by, I'm putting a whole story on the wind is blowing by me and it's messing up my hair. You see, it's not just wind. We make everything into a thing, and it starts at that ground level of that I thought, being the thinker, not so much the thinking. So in an absolute sense, nothing has ever happened to you. You see, it's just happening. Yeah. Yeah. So looking at the ground floor, looking at the room rather than the furniture in the room. What's really laying at the base of the whole thing? So what you are is listening. It's like you're a great subtle listener, not listening here. You are just the listening itself, not a listener, but just the listening of what's happening. If there's a stimulus that comes up, let's say a thought, there's a kind of a movement of that listening. It's almost like this. It's like, you're a great wide expanse, spacious awareness, yeah. Then something comes up in that space. So let's say a thought. Yeah. Now that expansiveness comes down to focus on that thought. It compresses the expansiveness and focuses on that thought. It puts all the listening into that one space. You see what happens? You go from this wide open, everything just being action, and it zooms right in to that thought. And it puts all of the listening onto that thought. Now the experience gets compressed, and now I'm taking myself to be that thought. But that movement of compression, that is taking the listening that we are and pointing it at one thing. This is something that happens constantly, all the time. It's why we're so tired a lot of the time. It's because we're taking ourselves wide open, we're compressing it and pointing it at something all the time. So how many thoughts? I think they say there's like 60 or 70,000 thoughts in a day. So there's a constant pointing of attention at those thoughts or at the senses or at what's going on. And it's suggesting that you're the thinker, you're the seer, you're the hearer. You're the one doing all this. Yeah? You need to change all of this because you're the one who owns it. You see how that could create a lot of anxiety quite quickly, really. It doesn't take that much. It doesn't take a lot of time for that to create a lot of compression, feeling that we're very closed in. And then, like I was saying before, now the mind is having you. You think you're the owner of the mind, but really the mind is owning you. The thought process is owning you. And because you're listening to that thought process, we're firing it up. We're making every thought into a story. And it starts at that ground level, ownership. Ownership, doership, and the concept or the idea that I am the thinker. Yeah. You've never done, owned, or initiated that. It's something very important to take refuge in that, because if I'm constantly getting caught in that, and the mental habit is to go towards sadness, depression, whatever it's going to move towards, it's going to run me around. It's going to run me around. See that you're not the one initiating it. And then if it's still firing really heavy, if there's still a lot of anxiety and depression, then go look at it. Go get it, go see somebody or whatever. But in my experience, if I think I'm the one initiating all of these thoughts and then I'm going somewhere to try to get help for it, I'm trying to change a system that I think I am. So it's going to be very resistant to change if I think I'm it. I feel like one of the best things that's ever happened to me is I got so depressed that the system overplayed its hand. And it became apparent there's no way I'm doing this because it got way too crazy. It went way too high and way too low, too fast. I was losing control of it, which proved that it wasn't me. I saw that at the time, and then I went right back to the programming of it's me for years, and it threw me back and forth. So that's kind of how it presented itself to me first. It was so crazy that I was like, I'm not doing this. Something else is going on. Yeah. There's a lot of power in seeing that you're not doing it. If we think we are the mental system and we are the thinker initiating the thoughts, we don't have that much power because the thoughts are having us. But as soon as you see you're not the thinker, you're not the doer, you're not the owner of the mental system or the body, you have a ton of power because you're sitting back in the listening. And wherever you put that listening, wherever you put that awareness, that's going to be the channel of the way your life is lived. But now you've got a lot of power where to put that awareness, because you know what you are and you know what you're not. And ultimately, absolutely, it is all one thing. Yeah. But to talk about that is pretty useless. So I'd rather talk about what I can see, being the mental system, and how to alter the relationship. So rather than changing around the thought process or messing with the thoughts, first get the relationship with them right and see that they're not mine. Then the whole thing will chill out in my experience. Then I can really look at it. Because if I'm taking it to be me, I'm not going to be honest about it. It's going to be difficult. The head isn't going to be honest about itself because it can only see two-ness. That's the value in seeing you're not the thinker. You're not the thinker, you're not the owner, and you're not the one initiating it. You're the listening. You come before. You come before it.